For those of you that are our viewers that don't know, Rick's actually our local superstar. He plays in a band. So the band is called Bonedaddy.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned coffee and alcohol because that's how the flavored coffee developed.
What's like one of the most odd or like crazy things that you've worked on?
Well, you might want to move the kids out of the room at this point. Yeah, we did flavors for edible underwear.
On this juicy episode of Behind the Flavors, we'll talk a little bit about coffee history, outlandish projects such as edible underwear, and we'll also talk about Bonedaddy. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Behind the Flavors, a podcast brought to you by Beck Flavors and hosted by yours truly, Michael Schubert. Today we have a very special guest, as usual. We have one of our chief flavor chemists, Rick Gibson. Welcome, Rick. How are we doing today?
We're doing great. It's Friday.
And it's a beautiful Friday in St.
It
Louis
is,
at
it
that. Let's kind of jump into how you came to the flavor world. So I know that you've been in the flavor industry for around 48 years now, but was young Rick Gibson, little baby Rick Gibson, did he come out and was he like, you know what, I love strawberry and oranges. I want to get into the flavor world.
No, I as with most people, they don't even know that, they don't look at that part of a product. They don't really even realize that flavors are being used. They don't read that far down on the label. But no, it was very serendipitous. I was looking for a job. I was majoring in business, minoring in chemistry, and got an offer to work in a lab at a local flavor company. Yeah.
Okay. Was that flavor company Beck originally, or did that come on down the line?
That came down the line.
That came down the line.
Right.
So how did you find Beck? How did Beck find you? Because a lot of times in the world I've noticed Beck actually finds their employees, ironically.
Right, yeah. I was actually contacted by the lab manager at that time.
Yeah.
Our company was moving out of state, and I didn't care to move, so.
Yeah, was that a part of, like, did you find them because you met them through, like, trade shows and stuff? How did they come and find you? Was it because you were learning and going to trade shows and trying to get into the flavor guild, trying to get to that certified flavorist?
It was the conventions, trade shows, yeah.
Awesome. And then, so when you originally started, you started at what we consider Beck 1. What were you doing right off the bat?
They pretty much dumped me right into developing flavors because I had worked in the business for like a dozen years already. So, but it was more in the sense of samples and QA.
Okay, more on the quality side of things.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. And then from there, I'm sure you started to, if you hadn't already, learned about the flavor guild itself. When did the path to becoming a certified flavorist start for you?
That was about 1990 when that started, yeah.
What was the one? Why did you think like, oh, that would be a good path to pursue?
Actually, my boss at the time was a flavor chemist, which to become a flavor chemist, you have to mentor under another flavor chemist. And, he suggested I do this, the career path, yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about it. Were you nervous when they were like, hey, you got to smell all these materials, you got to do this written and oral exam, or how'd that go for you? What'd that process look like?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That is nerve-wracking to say the least, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like just between me and you, I don't get to see you taste a lot of things that I feel like you've tasted a lot of things in the world as is, but I felt like it was probably like 6-7 months ago I got to see you taste this traditional Chinese medicine, and I feel like it's a one-off thing that it was something that you weren't familiar with, and boy was it cool because I feel like I was on the other side of those certified flavorist exams because you started tasting it and you were picking out notes and then you're like, oh, it'd pair well with this and that. Do you come across stuff very often that you haven't tasted at this point in your life?
Not a whole lot, probably the combination of different flavors. Yeah, that's the latest trend I see out there, and we're trying to come up with oddball combinations that taste great. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then did you take that creativity from the flavor world and you know what? I want to sprinkle in a little music to it because for those of you that are our viewers that don't know, Rick's actually our local superstar. He plays in a band. So the band is called Bonedaddy. So if you're ever in the St. Louis area, please check them out. Great music if you haven't heard any yet. But is that how'd that start? Was that prior, I'm assuming, to your world of flavor?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that started with the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. So yeah, going, I want to do that.
Yeah. So then that kind of segues me into my next question. Are those your favorite songs to sing, or like the Beatles songs?
I mean, we do a real variety, and I've been in all types of music over the years. I've done country rock, I've done country, blues, you know, all kinds of different kinds of stuff over the years. So
Yeah. So you're kind of saying that it's the variety.
It's
you
the
love.
variety I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of is the same in the flavor world, right?
Exactly.
Like you love working on a variety of projects. I remember there was a time in your past where they only had you doing butter flavors for like 2 years.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure at that point you're kind of sick of butter.
Absolutely was. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we take a pivot and kind of start diving into the world of flavor? So recently you really developed something kind of new for us here at Beck. You figured out a way to take our traditional fruit flavors and introduce a juicy note back into them. How did that start for you? Where did that start at?
That was mainly with the citrus flavors to begin with, because most of the citrus flavors that are out there are based on the essential oils from the skin of like a lemon, an orange, or grapefruit. And that isn't really where the juicy part is. The juicy is in the pulp, it's in the juice itself. And that's what's been kind of lacking in those type of flavors, even though traditionally they didn't have it in there. And started looking at the juice and analyzing it. It's like what makes it juicy, you know, and it's the ester content that's in all fruits. So we started adding that back, and it really, you know, it made it pop.
Yeah, what is a process for that? Like, what does a timeline for that look like for you? Does it take like 2 years to develop something like that, or is it kind of the same thing as everything where it's situational? So this one might have taken you 6 months, but other ones in the past could have been quicker, or you know, you pinpointed a little bit quicker there.
Yeah, it is. It is situational. Absolutely, yeah. And there's so many published things you can find out there on the internet, you know, where they're doing the aromatic constituents of a grapefruit juice, and you start seeing something common in all the different kinds of juices, and it's like, wait a minute, we can do that. We can make an individual key just for that.
Yeah. Is it so? And it's primarily with our fruits, but is it the same type of thing that you put back into all of them, or for like a grapefruit, do you have to tailor that a little bit differently to perceive a grape more? Because you know the fruits are a little bit different between themselves.
Right. The backbone of the fruit stays the same, so we're just inserting a bit of this juicy note. So yeah, it's dependent on the flavor itself, how much we put in, how much we add, and then of course the customer's taste.
Yeah, as well. And then can you tweak that as well? Because we talk all the time about how custom we are here at Beck. Can you make it extremely juicy?
Oh,
and then can you make it less juicy? So there is like a scale there that you can
absolutely,
play with.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. When you first put it together, was there one of the flavors that you were like, oh, I can't wait to introduce it here? This is one that's been struggling for a while. This will definitely hit the mark that's missing in the market.
Yeah, definitely grapefruit.
Grapefruit?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that one typically, I know you work in all the industries that we work in, but you definitely love working in the alcohol industry, I would say. So I'm sure that was like kind of natural for you in a sense. You were like, oh man, let me introduce this into this grapefruit, and now these grapefruit drinks I'm making, it really just bumps it up to the next level.
Right. Are you saying I like to drink?
Maybe a little bit, but that's all right. We all like to do a few things, but you know, I can't say there's a moment at Beck where at 10 a.m. they're like, hey, we have to do a big tasting on tequila, and everybody's hanging their head walking back there. Oh shoot, we got to go back here and taste all these tequilas. So although Rick, yes, we know, all of us kind of like to drink a little bit. Most people who drink, though, they typically follow it up with coffee. And one of the big things Beck got to work on in the past was the carrier systems of flavored coffee. I know you personally had a hand in that as well. Could you share a bit about your experience with coffee in the past?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned coffee and alcohol because that's how the flavored coffee developed. It started with somewhere in the late 70s. The finer restaurants started serving after dinner coffees with liqueurs in them. So they, amaretto, Irish cream, Kahlua, and that's where those pairings started to begin with. And at the time, General Foods picked up on that, and they came out with I don't know if you remember these, the little tins of international flavors for coffee. They were powder. They were basically it's very big in Asia right now. It's called a 3-in-1. So it was instant coffee, creamer, and sugar. But it was kind of boring on its own, so they borrowed from what restaurants were doing, and they started doing an Irish cream, amarettos, and hazelnuts, and so forth. But that's how that industry started, and the whole bean, small roasters picked up on it. It's like, we can also mask not so tasty beans, cheaper beans, by putting flavors on them. Yeah, so that's how that started to begin with.
Yeah, you said something interesting there that I personally never heard of, was this 3-in-1. I unfortunately don't remember the tins, but to me, like when you explain them, they're kind of like stick packs, like these new liquid IVs and stick packs like that.
Yeah, that's not it seems new because it's a stick pack, but that's been around for 40 plus years now. Yeah, like I said, it's huge in Asia. The 3-in-1 is
It's very big over there.
Very big.
I'm sure they were probably big kind of in like MREs and stuff too when the boys were out there fighting in the different wars. So then we talked about how that kind of transitioned to the small roasters getting into it. So is it the same carrier systems that you use there? Can you just, take like the water or the ethanol and then throw it onto the coffee beans? Or how did that work for you guys and making sure that it worked in a roasted bean?
Well, yeah, you don't want to add water because the bean has already been dried out. It's been roasted and dried out, so you don't want to use that. We chose at the time we had a competitor at the time that was getting into it about the same time we were, and they were using benzyl alcohol. And the issue was that they would go into the grocery store and they'd have these bins. You remember the bins of flavored beans?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And benzyl alcohol would etch the plastic on it, and it would cloud it all over. So our idea was to go with propylene glycol instead. It also coats the bean and gives the bean a longer shelf life to begin with.
Oh, that's very interesting. And then I remember early in my days at Beck, I had came to you on this same topic, and I was like, Rick, it's like so wild because, in all these other industries we work in, usage rates can be typically between like 0.1% to like 0.5%. And I'm like, but in this coffee world, it's 3%. Why is it so flavorful there? And you had a great answer for it that I never thought about.
Yeah, because it's 3% on a coffee bean, but you're not eating that coffee bean. You're making a brew with that. So when it actually gets down to how much flavor is in a cup, you're down to like 0.1%.
So it evens out, like after the brew process, the final application is at that same usage rate that we see in a lot of these other industries.
Exactly, you're making a concentrate basically. And the other part of that that's interesting is we build in the aromatics to release during the brewing process. So when you come into a room, it's like, oh, I smell cinnamon, or I smell Irish cream or hazelnut.
Yeah.
So that's part of the whole process. That's part of the enjoyment of making a flavored coffee.
Yeah.
Is the aroma.
Well, that's also the enjoyment. And as we learn a lot through our internal sensory work, your nose and the aromatics are actually a part of what you're tasting as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where we get a lot of the taste and stuff like that from. Yeah, the world of coffee is very interesting. I did want to take another pivot though. So we all talk a lot about the good here at Beck. What's like one of the most odd or like crazy things that you've worked on?
Well, you might want to move the kids out of the room at this point in time.
So everybody, this is a fair warning, move the kids out.
Yeah, we did flavors for edible underwear.
Edible underwear.
Underwear,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
So did you have to test those personally? Is that something where I'll
They
take
sent-
the R&D expense?
They sent examples.
Examples.
Yes, yeah.
So how'd that work for you? Like, is it a different carrier system you had to use on that?
It's a lot like what they now term fruit leather. You know what fruit leather is?
Like
the
dried fruit, like
steps.
real dried
Yeah,
fruit?
that's what they were using for the bulk of it, and almost like licorice whips sort of for the strings and the attachments and fasteners.
Yeah, but then did you transition it and like get like a pectin and gelatin and find like a mold or?
No, at the time they really just wanted the flavors. They would send us back examples of it.
Examples of it as well?
Yeah.
Man, that's an interesting one because I know we've worked on, even since I've been here, a few different type of products that aren't necessarily the underwear, but we've worked with some lubes and things like that.
Right.
Now, let's pivot one more time. What's like one of the your favorite things you've gotten to work on?
Probably whiskey at the moment. Yeah.
Whiskey?
Yeah.
Is it because you're a big connoisseur of it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you like taking things you like that and then trying to like kind of push the boundaries because you get an opportunity to do something that most people don't. Most people just get to go drink the apple whiskey. Are you like, all right, let's push this out. Let's see what other flavors I can bring in and maybe start a new trend yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Recently I worked on what it was a maple bacon flavor for whiskey, which we call pig candy.
And it's quite delicious, I will say.
Yeah, it tastes like you've smoked bacon and just slathered on maple syrup to the bacon while it's smoking.
Yeah, and then ironically, one of the other things I remember you working on that was interesting was we did like a red beans and rice beer. And
Yes.
that was quite an interesting thing to taste.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure that one wasn't as straightforward. That is quite the interesting project they worked on with those edible panties, Rick. But for all of our viewers out there that are watching, this is just a reminder about how custom we can be. We will take those outlandish ideas and try and put them into reality for you. So if you are interested in working on a project, please go to our request a sample on our website at www.beckflavors.com. And thank you again for watching this episode of Behind the Flavor, where we went behind the history with Rick Gibson. As always, please remember to like, comment, or subscribe. And if you have a topic that you would like us to cover that we haven't covered yet, you can hit us on any of our socials or our website as well. Thanks for joining us today, Rick.
Well, thanks for having me.